Harrison, thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome back to Omaha. Just
Yes.
recently accepted Jack Lewis Sportsperson Award. What does it mean coming back to your hometown and accepting that?
Yeah, it's really cool. I mentioned last night at the award show, I think this is like the first time since I left high school in 2014 that I've been able to get back to accept one of the awards or recognitions that I've had, and this was cool. I thought the event was really nice, and then to get to see some of the young kids. Nebraska's becoming quite the state for your youth athletics and high school athletics. We're kind of making a name for ourselves. There's some impressive people there last night.
And you were there for your playmakers organization as well, for your off-the-field accomplishments with that. Can you kind of take me back to when that idea started and why it started?
Yeah, I've always tried to find ways to give back in my communities. I think it's really important for athletes to use our role as well as we can to help motivate the next person in line. And my earliest memories working with children with special needs was back in middle school. And I can vividly remember going to lunch one day and my lunch table was full that I normally sat at with like the football players and the wrestlers and stuff. And so I looked around the lunchroom and I saw that our special education department was there. So I just like walked over and sat over there, and like the principal walked over and like people thought I was gonna like make a joke or do something. And I was just there to try to make new friends and met some cool guys who then I ended up being friends with through middle school and high school. And some of them lived in the neighborhood, so I rode my bike over to their house and played basketball and invited them to my prom group. And so I realized at a young age how awesome that population is. So when I got to the NFL, or when I got to college, I was working with an organization, and they were more targeted towards literacy skills in minority students and helping close the achievement gap. So that was like my first thing that I did when I was in college. When I got to the NFL, I went to Buffalo and I continued trying to do that. I actually brought that program here to Omaha at Belvedere Elementary School, and through me being in California and trying to hire students, it was really hard to keep it. We did it for a full year, but logistically it was tough. So I got to the NFL. I went into some of the inner city schools in Buffalo, and I would go, and so would my teammate. And as I would share my story and tell them about where I'm from in Nebraska, with corn, and I went to Stanford, way out on the West Coast, this highly academic school, and then my teammate would speak, and his story might have been more relatable to theirs. He similar background, they look more similar, and I realized that my connection with those kids, it wasn't as strong. And I kept continuing to try to go to a few schools, but as I talked, kids were kind of, on their phones. And then my teammate would talk and they'd kind of be more locked in. And so I realized like, hey, maybe there's another area that I can do even better, that a lot of my teammates are working with this group. And that's when I pivoted and started working with children and young adults with developmental differences and special needs. And so for the last 5 years, that's where I've sent all my passions and all my efforts, and we've grown Harrison's Playmakers now to another level. And we've probably done 25 plus events in these years. We always do summer camps, so I'm gearing up for my camp tour this summer, and excited to grow up in Minneapolis.
So where do you think all of this value of helping others was instilled? Was it a certain person, or was there a certain moment in your life that you're like, hey, I want to be more than a sport, I want to help people as well?
It'd be really tough, I think, to pinpoint, but I would say that there was a lot of times in my life that those actions were maybe reinstated with like positive reinforcement. I mean, if you're a 3-year-old kid and you bring someone a cup of water or do something nice for a parent or something, they're like, oh, thank you so much. They reward you and let you know that that's a good thing. And being raised kind of through the church, always surrounded by those people who want to serve others and give back to others. So I imagine some of that was instilled in me at a young age. And then, when I was a kid, I was all in on NFL. Like, the first phone I ever got, my background has been the exact same since. It's just the NFL logo. I got a tattoo when I was 16 years old. I have footballs on this. Like, I called my shot. I was all in. And I can't imagine how big of a deal it would have been if I was able to like sit down and meet or talk to an NFL football player when I was younger. And so as I started getting older and older, I like made a promise to myself, like, hey, be a person that this 6-year-old you or 8-year-old you would have loved to, see and meet and talk to. So that was kind of a motivator for me too through the process. Was like, I got to go back to my younger self, because there's somebody just like me out there who would, die to get to meet me and pick my brain and ask me questions.
So you've gotten a lot of accolades on the football field, but what's the most rewarding part of all this charity work, all this community service?
I think the most rewarding part is the friends that I have now. And by that I mean like my playmakers. I have, especially up in Western New York, because I'm not here in Nebraska as much. I think we've been trying to do 3 events here a year, and one of those I don't get to go to. That's like my Christmas thing where I bring kids and they get to go pick out whatever toys they want on me. Well, I'm not even there for that because I'm still playing. But Buffalo, I was able to be there present, and we did about 9 events a year. So I'm seeing these kids, you know, just as frequent as some people are seeing their parents 9 times a year. And so they're all, you know, friends of mine, and like when I didn't sign, they were crying in tears, and we text each other and FaceTime each other and happy birthdays. And so I've made a lot of friends out of this. And now as Omaha grows, and now we're on my 3rd year doing stuff here, I'm starting to see the same kids in first name basis with some of the guys, and they're wanting to come to Minnesota games. And so I think the relationships I've made with people has probably been the most rewarding part of the work.
Well, you're back in Omaha, so any memories come back as you drive through the town once again? Any restaurants or certain places?
Yeah, well, fortunately, you know, we have a lot of off season in the NFL, and so I'm back home quite a bit now, and I haven't bought a home here that's on the docket. I just had to get everything figured out in Minneapolis, where we're going to be living for a majority of the year. But I plan to buy a home here. All my friends are back here. I got 2 tee time books for the next 2 mornings. I'm going golfing with my boys, and but yeah, every time I get back, there's something on memory lane. Somebody will come up and reintroduce himself to me and remind me of, oh, I know you from, remember this, we used to do this, or we went fishing here, remember we were on the train tracks. All the fun memories. It's definitely nostalgic, and I very appreciate that I was raised here. I think it's a fantastic place to raise a family. Our values and the community here is very special. I'm going to my high school right after this to go work out. I like to get back up there with the high school kids and help them, show them the things that I'm learning and doing to try to get Millard West a couple state championships. We've been struggling as of late, but yeah, I love it here. This is home.
And when you think back to that time at Millard West and then ultimately making the decision to go to Stanford, what went into that and what did you learn through that process?
Yeah, it was very difficult for a 15, 16-year-old kid to kind of manage. I think I received my first scholarship like middle of my sophomore year. And at the time, you know, I wanted to go football, but almost more importantly, I know that I needed to have college paid for. Through some unfortunate situations, my father lost his job a couple times through like 2008, then a new place, and then that company went under. And so we were down on our luck for a while. Had to sell the house, it was bad. And I knew, you know, through reading the fine lines of, I needed my college paid for. Otherwise, it would have been a very sticky situation. They couldn't have afforded to get me there. I don't know how it would have happened. So that was a motivator for me very early on, and I didn't know if then football was actually the right path. I didn't know how good I was going to be. I was an excellent wrestler. So I always had to keep in mind, like, maybe wrestling's my way out. And so as I kept going, it was like, okay, well, I'm getting looks from these big-time wrestling scholarships, but the football ones are more like South Dakota State, North Dakota State, the smaller schoolish instead of the Power 5. And then finally, I think I had like 15 wrestling scholarships before like a big, I think Kansas State was my first Power 5 Division I offer. And after that, they kind of flooded in. And my biggest goal that I ever wanted was to win a high school state championship in football. Like, I remember as a little kid going to all those Millard West games. Like, in 2008, they won. And I was like, I want that to be us when we're seniors. So I didn't want to be a distraction. My sophomore and junior year, I'd play a game Friday. We'd beat Millard South or do something awesome. You want to go have a good time and be around your teammates. We'd have to get in a car and drive to Chicago to go to Northwestern and go on a visit in the game, or we'd drive to Wisconsin and we're going to do a visit. And I wasn't able to like really be with my team. So I also made a precedent in my recruiting process that I was going to commit early. I wanted to commit as early as I could. So I committed before my senior year even started, so that my whole senior year I could just be focused on winning the state title. But along the way, I had thought that Nebraska was going to be the school that I'd go to. I think every kid in here is like, oh, I'll go to Nebraska one day. And unfortunately, they were my 26th scholarship offer. So if it had happened earlier on in the process, I probably wouldn't have looked anywhere else. But as it was going, and they kept kind of stringing it along, or it's like, maybe he'll walk on here. We don't know what position you are. We got to see what other guys are doing. Meanwhile, all these other teams are calling and saying, like, come here, you start, do all these things. I'm really happy with my decision, and Stanford was fantastic, and I really appreciated my time there. But I definitely wanted to be a Go Big Red guy at heart.
Now you're on that list of athletes that the Huskers wish they had, right?
Yeah.
They love to bring up Joe Burrow and all that, so you can add yourself to that list maybe.
Yeah, I've met Joe Burrow and his family, and his brother. I go back and forth with his brother quite a bit about. We could, if you think of some of the guys that they missed on that have come out of here, and even like to play at the Division I level, the drop off isn't that big. Like from the guys who are all conference players to the guys who are all conference players in Division II, they're still very similar football players. And so look at some of the other guys from Omaha who've gone on and had great careers at the Division II level or the D1 AA level. If we would have hit on the right people here, we would have been pretty good.
Well, you went to Stanford, and you learned a little bit there. You double majored. Mm-hmm. What did you learn about yourself through that? And graduating Stanford early as well, putting your name in the draft, what was the biggest thing you think you learned?
Well, I think it gave me, my overall experience there allowed me to be more well-rounded in just all things. You know, when you live in Nebraska, you're kind of in a bubble. There's not a lot of moving pieces, not a huge city. Like, you know, it's Nebraska. And also a conservative state. You go out to California, and then like capital of like a liberal state is like the San Francisco Bay Area, which is where Stanford is located. And so to go from almost kind of two extremes, I learned a lot, and there were some things going on there that you're starting to read about more in the news today. But you know, this was 8 years ago that I was seeing and experiencing some of this stuff. So it definitely gave me a more a wider scope and multiple lenses to look at problems. And then I just met a lot of interesting people. The diversity on that campus is insane. I mean, so I met a lot of cool people, and just able to look at things more holistically as being able to hear educated people speak on different things, politically, religion, all different categories of life from a very educated background. So I felt like that was beneficial to me. And then I also learned that there's some people out there with a lot of money. There's people that are very, very rich in this world, in that Bay Area. You know, a lot of CEOs, startups, Fortune 500 companies started right there. So I was able to network and meet a lot of really great people that way.
For sure. Nobody knocked on your door asking if you wanted to open a company with them? I'm surprised.
Well, unfortunately, NIL wasn't a thing back then.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you know, life might be a little bit better. I might have showed up in a different car today. But no, there were some cool opportunities. I started a little company with a couple friends when we were there. Didn't do anything.
It wasn't Yahoo.
No, it wasn't. Yeah, it was called DoorDash. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
Yeah.
No, but I did. I interned each summer at different, I interned at a startup that was pretty successful. I worked at a private equity firm, which we sourced a lot of those deals. Then I was partners with a handful of people at Andreessen Horowitz, which is one of the biggest venture capitalist firms. And so some of those relationships I built are starting to come 360 as now I'm in position to get involved financially in some of those things. And that's one of the reasons that people go to Stanford. They don't say it's a 4-year decision, it's a 40-year decision because of the, hopefully when they see that on your resume, you kind of go to the top of the pile. And I haven't got to experience that because nobody really cares about a resume when you're playing football. But maybe life after football, I'll see some of those benefits, but those relationships definitely are paying off for me.
And then the NFL draft in 2018, you decided to go early in that. Putting your name in, what was it like mentally to go through that process and putting your name out there, putting yourself out there?
Yeah, it was an interesting process. I could have gone back to Stanford for another year. I already had both my majors. I honored and minored. And at that point, it was hard to say what more can you accomplish. I mean this humbly, but I finished my senior season and broke a record for the NCAA for the most tackles at my position. I had 106 tackles as a nose guard, which is like unheard of. I think I had 20 plus tackles for loss, 8 sacks, forced fumbles, block kicks. I mean, it was like when you go back, how can you even beat that? You're averaging 10 tackles a game. And so I decided to enter the draft with some, tough decision. I thought maybe I'd go back, get my master's, try to win another Pac-12 title, but ultimately decided to go. And then as the draft came, I had a very successful combine. I was a top performer in like the jumps and the bench and the short shuttle agilities. And then at the time there was a ton of hype, and all these experts are coming out saying, oh, he's our number 3 this, he's our number 2 this, top 5 this. And it's all arbitrary numbers because you don't really know what the general managers are thinking. But I kind of leaned into that too heavy. And so for a while I was like, dang, some of these people got me going like 28th overall. Am I going to be a first round pick? And I didn't really think I was going to be a first round pick. I didn't, but still, as the draft was there and we were watching first round, we were getting later in the picks, and I was kind of peeking at my phone like, all right, these guys said I might go to Atlanta, so they're coming up. And I was a long shot. But I did genuinely believe that I was going to be a second round pick. So day one went, it was cool, didn't really expect to go. Most of those lists had me as like the 3rd or 4th, and 3 defensive tackles went in the first round. So I was like, oh, well then I'll probably be the next defensive tackle to go. And somehow, some way, how the draft works is another D tackle got drafted, another D tackle got drafted, another D tackle got drafted, and the worry kind of sets in, and I was, like, what is going on? It was just a really weird, bearing feeling because it's completely out of your control. I'm calling my agent, like, what's going on? This guy just got drafted. He had like 21 tackles this season, and he ran slower than I did at the combine. Why would they draft him higher than I have, or higher than I am? But ultimately, there's a whole long story about what happened. We ended up finding out that one of the teams started a rumor that I broke my thumb at their mini camp 5 days before, and they were trying to get me later in the draft. So actually, when I got the call, my phone rang, I answered, and the first thing they said is, are you healthy? Where are you? It's like, I'm in my basement. They said, we heard that you had surgery and that you were in a hospital. It's like, no, I'm 100% healthy. What are you talking about? I'm good. And I could go tackle a tree right now. And anyway, so then they, all right, we'll put you on the phone. And it was a general manager for the Bills. And got drafted there, tears. I was crying like a baby. It was a surreal moment. I completely forgot about how shitty I was feeling the like half hour, an hour prior to that. All these people were getting drafted. And when I got up to Buffalo, I told them, as I looked them in the eyes, I was like, look, I'm here to prove you guys right. 31 teams passed on me, and you guys didn't. So let me prove to you why you picked me.
Did it all kind of soak in? Because I know you had the letters NFL literally above your bed as a kid.
Yeah. I don't remember when it was. I think it was middle school, but I had printed out NFL on pieces of paper. I did it 3 times. One was taped to the top of my car. One was right above my ceiling fan in my bed, and one was on my mirror where I brush my teeth every morning. And so, laying in bed, it's up there. You sit up, I see my bathroom mirror. There it is there. I get in my car. It's above me. My phone is still the same, this background.
Yep, there it is.
NFL.
NFL.
I don't know. I think there's something to seeing is believing. You kind of heard me talking last night about believing in yourself. And when that moment came, even though, again, like the hour before, I was pissed off, like, why the hell is this guy getting his name picked? I'm clearly had a better career than him. When the phone came, it was just a rush of emotions. And I think there's a lot of people that work really hard at what they do. Like, obviously, you had to make a lot of sacrifice, commitment. You had a lot of hard work to get to be in your position. But I don't know if people really understand what I had to do to get to where I am. And that's the reason why everyone wants to be in the NFL and not everyone is like, it is a huge commitment. I missed a ton of parties in high school. I missed a ton of relationships. I could have great friends that were ruined because I was going to the gym and going to workouts. And, my whole junior and senior season, it was like 5 o'clock wake up, at the gym before school, workout during school, during weight training. Then I had practice, and after practice I would go and meet with another trainer and work out after that. And we're talking like 6-7 hours of training a day. When you're that young, your body can handle it. My body would break down now. But so much sacrifice, so much work, so many times to go out to eat, and I can't order that because I need to eat clean and eat healthy. They're going to Dairy Queen. I'll just ride with you guys, but I'm not gonna get nothing. All those little things, it was like, oh, it was for this moment. And I never really, you only smell the roses for like 24 hours. You talk to someone who wins the Super Bowl and they're like, yeah, the next day was the worst day of my life. It's because, well, you accomplished this, what now? And so sometimes it's hard to measure success when you keep raising the bar. And that's kind of what happened. It was really cool for like the next moment, but then it was like, boom, now I got to start. Now I got to get sacks. Now I got to sign a second contract. Now I got to win a Super Bowl. And so, as I've aged, I've learned to smell the roses a little bit more and be more present and, never feel guilty for accomplishing something great, but also like still striving for further goals ahead, I guess.
You talked about it earlier, but you didn't even know if you were going to go to college or if your family could afford it for you. What was it like for mom and dad during that moment? I'm sure it was really special.
Yeah, well, I remember the first thing was when I got that first like full ride Division I scholarship, and it was South Dakota State. They offered me a full ride, and so at like 15 years old, I could tell my mom and dad. I came home from school and I said, like, my college is paid for, all of it, books, tuition, room and board. You don't have to pay a penny for my college. And that was a really cool thing when we were struggling at the time, to know that weight was off of their shoulders. It was really cool. Then fast forward to when I got drafted, we were still living in a house that we shouldn't have been living in. And my room was a storage room. I didn't have a bedroom. I lived in a storage room with like the bed on concrete, all concrete walls, no little window, whatever. And great for sleeping. Cold in there, dark in there. That was maybe that was my trick to the recovery, was just like sleeping in this dungeon. But like, and now, they're in a beautiful house out in Elkhorn. They both had 15-year-old cars. They both have, my dad was also to get a better job, and they're doing well, close to retirement.
And you could help them out as well because you signed a new deal with the Vikings on your shirt there.
Yeah. How to represent the brand.
Yeah, exactly. Skull. What's that transition been like?
It's been awesome. I've loved my time there. Precursor, I never thought I was going to leave Buffalo. Never ever imagined my life with another team. I made myself. I did everything I could to make a career in Buffalo and stay there forever. I thought I was going to be a lifer with some of the connections and the friends and the stuff that I made there, my foundation. But as soon as I found out that wasn't possible, or wasn't going to happen, then it was all in on what teams, and the free agency process is insane. But we went from like 13 teams to 7 teams to 4 teams, and then it was down to 2, and finally made the decision to go to Minnesota because of I weighed all options, and I didn't there was some opportunities where there was a bigger financial commitment from other teams. This wasn't like, I didn't just go to the team that offered me the most money. I went to the place with the best opportunity and where I thought that there was a win now opportunity. That a rebuild is really fun. I did that in Buffalo, but at this stage of my career, I want to go somewhere where the writing's on the wall that this team can win. I love the new head coach, and I love the new general manager. They did a really good job pitching of how they want to use me and what value they see I bring. And then as I've been up here the last 8 weeks, they've reinstated those things that they said to me. It wasn't just like a recruiting pitch. They seem to really value my opinion. They see me as a leader there, playing significantly. And I pray to stay healthy and to have an amazing season.
Well, nobody forgets the first team that took the chance on them. And you had some great moments in Buffalo as well. One of them that stood out to me, your first sack, Eli Manning.
Yeah.
What was that like? What do you remember?
It was fun. It was it was like really early on in the season, and we had just drafted a first-round pick, Ed Oliver, who's just an insane athlete. And we had a guy in year 14 that was a pass rusher named Lorenzo Alexander. We had another guy named Jordan Phillips. So we have like really, really good pass rushers on our team. But one thing that we did there is that there's kind of like the quarterback has to make plays and checks. We had a player on the defensive line who also had to call plays and checks. So we would see what formations the offense is in, and we would have to dictate what is the best pass rush against this. And I was really good at that stuff because I understand the mental side of the game. And there was a couple miscommunications, and we messed up some rushes. And I normally wasn't a third down rusher. They kind of limited me as like, you're a run stopping guy. And finally in this game, they were so fed up with a few of the miscommunications and stuff. They're like, well, we know Harry knows it. Let's send him out there. And so this was like my first real third down in an NFL game. My whole rookie year, Kyle Williams, all-pro guy, would get them, and I'd come off. And so finally, started my second year, I go in like my first ever time to go third down, beat another guy, sack on Eli Manning. And I was like, I didn't know that it was a sack fumble. So I turned and I'm just freaking out, don't know what to do with my arms, I'm just like blown away. And then everyone's like running past me. I turn around, there was a fumble, I should have recovered. So I'm getting yelled at for not recovering the fumble. I don't care, I was on cloud nine. And then they let me go in the rest of the game, and I had like another hit on him and rushed really well. So then the next game I was starting on our third down package, which is like the NFL, that's big money stuff, right? And I was starting on our 2-minute, which, like they have to win the game. You're out there to help us win the game. And I tore my ACL that game. So my career was going like this and then went to nothing. But that moment was really cool. And that sack I had on him, this was gonna be my claim to fame for my rest of my life. I sacked him. That was the last sack of the game. They then pulled him and put in the rookie that year, Daniel Jones. So Eli didn't play the rest of the season. He already announced his retirement. So it was going to be said that I was the last person that ever sacked Eli Manning. That was my claim to fame, my little trivia, all that stuff. But they put him in the second to last game of the season, and he got sacked twice. So
I was going to say,
I couldn't do it. That's no longer my claim to fame. But
no wonder Eli retired after you got hold of him. He couldn't take that the rest of his career.
Exactly. That's what it is. No.
So you mentioned the ACL tear. Read this story that a few days later you visit children at a hospital. Why did you decide to do that? I mean, your career just took a huge turn in your life, and you decided to give back to the community. What made that decision? Yeah,
I tore my ACL on Sunday, got the results Monday. I went to the hospital on Tuesday. I was just at a really, really low place. I still don't, I'm trying to educate myself more on mental health. It's hard for me to understand, people say that they have depression or they have anxiety or they struggle with these different things. And I try to figure out like what that exactly means. What are you feeling? Because I think I was depressed. I'm not sure. I don't know. I think I'm like fairly mentally tough, so sometimes I might be able just to like battle out some demons that others can't. But I knew that something was not feeling good, and I was in a kind of a real bad mental space. Everything was dull, no emotion. I mean, I was just crying and crying and crying and crying. And so I was like, well, what's one of the things that makes me the most happiest in the world? And that's like working with the kids that I work with. So I went over to Oshai, which is our children's hospital up there. I go there every couple weeks, and went to our oncology unit, and then like sat down with a kid who tells me that he's supposed to die in a year. And then I was like, well, why don't you suck it up, Harry? And I got some real perspective on life, and met with some other families who've got infants in NICUs who they don't think will come out of the NICU. And I just got some real perspective of like, you think that this is the biggest thing in the world and your life is over. And maybe, how much my identity is a football player, it did feel like my life is over. When football is over, my football life is over. And that's going to be a really hard thing to deal with. Players always deal with that when they transition out of football. And I had fear that was my transition. It was my second knee. It was my second ACL in that same knee. You never know how surgeries go. People don't come back from it all the time. So again, I thought it was like the worst thing that could ever happen. And then you go and get better perspective outside of that. So that helped a lot.
you get the knee surgeries and you come back and have a career year in Buffalo as well. What kept you going?
That same passion that woke me up at 5 o'clock when I was tired at 15 years old and went to the gym instead of going to the pumpkin patch with the bull, whatever it was that I decided to do, all those sacrifices, that same passion is still in me. And, I don't even know if I could ever use the word complacency just because it's so far off from what I believe in. And, I think anything in life, that saying, anything in life worth doing is worth overdoing. And I take that to football very literally. I love the game. I love what it does for my family. There's really nothing more exciting than tackling a grown man and just laying it's fun. I enjoy that. I know you can't do that. I can't do that for forever. So that was a motivator for me. I thought of the kids that I work with and how important I am in their lives and the impact that I still wanted to make. So as I was going through the ups and downs of the rehab and biting on a wooden spoon, holding my knees because the pain was so bad, crying, I just kept thinking about those things that motivated me.
And then now, signing a 3-year deal back in March, we mentioned a little bit with the Minnesota Vikings. What are your goals there, not only on the field, but off the field to continue your work?
Yeah. On the field there, I've always wanted to be a captain in my career, and that's something that's out of your control, so it's not really anything. But I think that'd be something that as I grow there, I think I was really close to doing that in Buffalo. I think the relationships I have with my teammates, there's kind of different types of power. There's positional power and there's personal power. That positional power is like your starting quarterback, your starting middle linebacker. They're just in the position to lead. But that positional or that personal power is like what you build up with someone when you check in on them on a daily basis and you wish them a happy birthday and you know their kids' names and those other things that mean a lot. I had a lot of that backed up for 4.5 years of just being who I was. So as I transitioned to Minnesota, those guys don't know me yet. They don't know that I like to work hard. They don't know that I like to be a family-oriented person and friendly. And so I'm trying to show them who I am so that hopefully I can earn that role one day. On the field, I hope to start and to be a very crucial person to our defense. I was a part of the #1 defense in the NFL last year, and so help some of the guys on my team understand what was successful for us there and what we can try to replicate and do in our own way in Minnesota. And then ultimately, one of the reasons I came to Minnesota was talking with their front office about my future there. And, hey, the money is what the money is. This is where we can get to. But, if you come and play how you've played, since I only did it for 1 year due to my injuries, if you show that consistency with us, you could earn an extension here in 2 years. So I'd like to play there for a couple of years, prove that last year wasn't a fluke, and that's the player that I am, and then earn an extension there. And, that's probably the big contract, the one that changes your life forever, and win a lot of football games.
You go from one amazing fan base with the Bills Mafia to another with the Vikings, also well known for their fans, the painted faces, all the school chants, the horns, everything like that. Back in Buffalo, though, I have to ask, did you smash any white folding tables?
I never purposefully smashed it. I probably broke a table in my life, but I never smashed a table. I was too worried about getting hurt doing it.
It's a liability.
But I've been to a handful of tailgates and parties and whatever fandom events where tables are smashed and broken and people are lit on fire. And yeah, I think that you'd be better interviewing some of my high school friends who came up and visited and hearing their stories about it.
I'm sure. Well, Minnesota, I'm sure, opened you with welcome arms as well. What does it mean putting on that uniform for the first time, getting into training camp, and just getting comfortable with that team and your offense and the defense you'll be working with every day?
Yeah, we just did our photo shoot this last week, so it was the first time I got to see my actual, put on my real uniform, jersey, pants, and everything. And I can't lie to you, the purple looks pretty good. I do. I like the purple. So it was cool to get that on. And again, now that I'm older in my career, I remember to smell the roses and this is really cool. It's the first time I'm putting on this jersey. Who knows what the future of this? I'm wearing number 97 now, so a new number. I looked at it and I was like, this could be what I retire in potentially years down the road. but it's exciting, and the guys are really cool. I've never been forced to make new friends before. In college, you're brought in with your whole recruiting class, and you room with guys, and you're around. So you just like have your crew. The NFL, you get drafted together. Guys are young, so they're not married. They don't really have kids. So guys are always doing stuff. You live in a hotel with the guys. You're always around them. Well, when you're a free agent, now you can't really hang around the young bucks because they're like 21 and the young kids. And then everyone else normally has their wives, has kids, they're married. So you kind of have to like weasel your way around to find who wants to go golfing, who wants to do this. And Minnesota's been really good. The guys on the team have definitely welcomed me, and I'm becoming really good friends with a lot of those guys. And that's important to me. I think the best teams that I've been on in life is teams that are close. So.
5th year in the NFL, you can almost consider yourself a little bit of a veteran.
Yeah.
You're getting down there.
I feel like a veteran.
Yeah, you feel like a veteran, I'm sure.
I feel like it.
What's your biggest piece of advice for young athletes?
I think you struggle so much early on with setting goals that you can't control. From like top down, could be like, okay, I want to make all conference, or I want to be all state. That's so far out of your control. Like you could be the best player in the state and not make all state because some group of 10 dudes decide who make that. Like it's arbitrary. It's like making the Pro Bowl in the NFL. There's plenty of players that are Pro Bowl players that don't make the Pro Bowl for some random reason. So for a young athlete, and this was hard for me, you have to be able to like control what you can control, which is obviously something you've heard before, but I really mean that. Not as an excuse, so you want to start and you're not starting, well, it's because the coach doesn't like me and he's just putting a guy ahead. That's the case sometimes. There could be situations where a coach says, no, I like this player, he's younger than you, so his upside's bigger than yours, or he's a senior, I want him to have his chance before he leaves and never gets to play again. Those are real, those are just coaches' decisions, that's out of your control. But one thing I always hung my hat on is that any team that I was a part of, if you surveyed any kid walking off a practice field, who's the hardest worker on your team? They were going to say my name. And that was more important to me than starting, more important than leading in sacks, leading in tackles, is that when you ask my teammates, anybody, offensive guy, a receiver, a cornerback, who's the hardest worker on our team, they would say me. And that's something you can control because you can go to practice early, you can stay at practice late, you can push the tempo, be the first person in every drill and set the standard of what the practice is going to be like. And I tried to be that guy, and I lost some friends because I was always like being that guy, and they're like, dude, we're just at a high school practice, like I'm going and going like it was my Super Bowl. And but that's the reason why I am where I am today. So that's what I would encourage like the high school athletes, is that in 10 years from now, and 20 years from now, if you're still playing your sport or if you're working a job in sales, that when you go back, if I went back to your high school teammates and asked who was the hardest worker on your team, they would say your name. And if you could control that, I think you'll be very successful in anything you do.
Well, Harrison, hopefully it's a long time from now, but when the jersey's hung up, all put away, retired, hopefully that number is retired in Minnesota.
That'd be pretty damn nice.
Maybe some Super Bowl rings for those poor fans,
I'd have to get some of those if I want to retire that. Yeah.
How do you want to be remembered? Not as a football player, but as a person.
How do I want to be remembered as a person? I don't know. To be honest, it's not extremely important to me what other people, how they think of me. I think more than anything, when I retire and I'm done, I want to have my organization as like a well-oiled machine, that it is still, doesn't matter, and we're proving this in Buffalo. I'm no longer on the Bills team. I don't have anything to do with Buffalo, but I have a camp with 500 kids on it in 3 weeks. And at the end of the summer, I'm doing another event that has 110 kids signed up. So I wanted to still be able to have my legacy in these different cities that I play in, you know, God willing, hopefully not, but maybe I'm on another team in 3 years. And now I have 4 cities that I work with. And maybe I'm on another team a year after that. And now I have 5 cities that I work in. And so the guy in his basement tweeting in his boxer's opinion of me doesn't really matter. I just would like to, when I put my jersey down and I retire, I can step back and hey, look at what's here that's still growing 10 years after I started it. Look what's here 7 years after I started. Look what's here that I started 2 years ago and continuing to go. And I think that legacy is most important. And I tell it to some high school kids when I talk to them. It's like the most important time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. And so when you are planting seeds that you might never ever get to see come fruition, that's what like building a legacy is. So that's more what I imagine life outside of football is, continuing to work with kids and young adults and their families, and hopefully have those relationships till I'm done, dead.
Well, thank you so much, Harrison. You've made quite the impact. It's very obvious with all the lives you touched. So thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, I appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.